here with Jean-Raymond Stauffacher, who is president of the Protestant Reformed Evangelical Churches of France. We're here in Montpellier, and Jean-Raymond is also a graduate of John Calvin Seminary. So, Jean-Raymond, tell us a bit about yourself, how you came to France, and the fact that you have impeccable English and French.
Well, I was born in France, born in Paris, in a Protestant hospital in Paris, the Diaconesse de Reuilly, because my parents came as missionaries, as Baptist missionaries in the 1960s. And then around 17 or 18, after an experience in America, I chose to be French and decided to root myself in this beautiful country.
So how did the Lord lead you and confirm His calling you into ministry? And tell us how John Calvin Seminary, what was the role that the seminary played in your story and leading you into ministry?
Well, my parents, when they came to France, made a radical missional choice. And they chose to church plant in a very communist city in the beginning of the 1970s. And that's in that context that I was brought up, in a very hostile context to the church. A bit of solitude also, being often the only Christian person in my classroom, even in my school sometimes. But I think that radical choice really led and set into me a sense of missions and a sense of involvement in missions. And it's from that sense of involvement in missions and having a missional perspective that I went into seminary.
So how did your years at John Calvin Seminary shape you and your ministry as you look back on the number of years that you have been pastoring a church?
So I discovered the richness of Reformed theology. It was actually, I think, in my perspective, what was lacking in my understanding of God, of the nature of God. And courses that were given to us on those subjects by, for example, Paul Wells during that time, other well-known names have really helped us and helped me and my wife that I met at the seminary. Seminaries also for that sometimes, and I was very happy to meet her. We just went deeper into our knowledge of God, and that, I think, developed so many things in us also. And we were called by Hugh Wessel, that probably many of you also know, to serve directly in one of the local churches in the north of Marseille, a big city right near Aix-en-Provence. And it's in that context that we really heard the Lord calling us.
So you're president of the denomination of Protestant Reformed Evangelical Churches in France. Can you help us understand a little bit of the role of the denomination in the French evangelical landscape?
France is always looked upon, and rightfully so, I would say, as one of the hardest countries in the world to evangelize in. We have probably one of the most highest rates of atheists in the world, unbelieving people who and that's probably the hardest part about it, who are not interested in the faith in any way. How do you get people interested? Well, it's in this context, and that's a paradox, that most of the evangelical movement has really flourished in the last 70 years. We consider that there was 54,000 evangelicals in France in the 1970s. Today, we're looking at maybe 650,000 people. And so today, I think confessing Christians are really part of what being a Protestant in France is. And they're weighing in more and more. But in the last years, we've been really grateful to the Lord to see that our denomination has grown. We've taken in pretty much 80 members per year. And in our context, it's a really encouragement for us.
So I understand that a large number of pastors within the denomination are graduates of John Calvin Seminary. Can you help us understand a little bit of the role of the seminary in training pastors and how that fits into the Protestant landscape in France?
Statistics show that 85% of our pastors, the pastors serving in our denomination today, have been through studies at the John Calvin Seminary. And so that's a really important part of our pastors. Other pastors are coming from different perspectives. but also go through the seminary for additional courses and training. And so it goes to show how dependent we are and how invested we want to be in the seminary. But also there's another dimension I think that's really important to understand about John Calvin Seminary, is my story personally, coming from a fundamentalist Baptist background and finding in the seminary really an opening that I needed and an enrichment that I needed. And so the seminary has this role also, not only training the pastors that will be coming and serving in our denomination as Protestant Reformed denomination, but also training people coming from Pentecostal, Charismatic, Baptist backgrounds and enriching them and having them really profit from our tradition and theology and go back to their own personal churches. John Calvin Seminary is about training, but it's also about sending.
So as you, Jean-Raymond, have the 30,000-foot perspective on the denomination, how do you view the state of the church in France as it relates to calling and raising up new pastors for working in the churches? And what can we as the Huguenot Fellowship be doing to support you in that?
I think we're seeing overall, and maybe this is worldwide also, at least in the West, a drop in young people being called to pastoral service. I think the pastor function has also evolved a lot in the last years, specifically in France, and we need to invent new ways of reaching out to these young people. We also need to be reaching out to second career professionals who come with a whole history of involvement in their lives and come to the seminary, and we need to adapt ourselves as a denomination and church to welcome this new type of profile. And in all of this, we need the leadership of the seminary, John Calvin Seminary. How can we, in a joint thinking, a joint venture, how can we go towards these new types of challenges that are in front of us?
And in closing, what are two ways that we in the Huguenot Fellowship can be praying for the church in France and be supporting kingdom work here? The
first prayer request that I would share with you is just praying for a missional spirit. That's really, I think, the essential part of what we want to be living as a community. We have decided of a new vision, and that we resume as live in Christ, living in Christ. And that really, I think, captures the spirit of what we want to do. Our life is in Christ, and we need to unpack that. And this life in Christ leads us to transformed hearts, and it leads us to a transformed and renewal in our mission. And that's really something you can pray for. If you look at the statistics of our church, of our union, we have 17 churches who are growing in a growing process, 24 who are stable, and the rest, and the 53, which is pretty much 16 other churches, are declining. And that gives you maybe the wider picture of what's happening. We need to concentrate on these 24 churches, strengthen the 17 churches that are growing, but concentrate on the 24 churches need to be challenged into stepping into a missional perspective. And then maybe the last subject, of course, is that the subject of calling. We're seeing the effects of secularization. As I said, we're seeing also the transformation maybe of the candidates coming into seminary, but it's a specific very point that we need to pray for. May the Lord bless you all. Thank you again for the help that you've brought to us. We're so grateful for all our partners, international partners who support us, and grateful for the great work that the Huguenot Fellowship has done all over the years. God bless you.
So thank you, Jean-Raymond, for being with us today on this beautiful day in southern France. And we look forward to hearing how God uses John Calvin Seminary to advance kingdom work in France.